Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the show. I recognize that I'm doing this at a time when nobody knows I'm doing it. I just wanted to drop in here and do a little show. Um, this is not going to be anything regular. Well, maybe it will be if people pick up. But anyway, so I had some thoughts that I wanted to kind of relay concerning culture and things along those lines. Someone had sent me something that we had a great conversation. Well, first of all, we had a great conversation on a recent live that I did um, Melissa Ford, and it was this episode right here, and we had a great conversation. But we went back and forth about what's going on with young people being able to read and things along those lines. So somebody, as I asked them to, sent me something. So I want to kind of review that what they sent me, and I mean this in the best of intentions, in a nice way. I do want people to send me things along those lines and all that kind of stuff. So this is not any way to be a negative light on who sent it to me. So if you have not watched the show with Melissa Ford, make sure you go not with Melissa Ford, but about Melissa Ford. Go back and make sure that you watch that. Hello to the few of you who are watching this live. So make sure y'all hit the like button. Hit the like button. All right. So again, this is going to be about culture and all that. And I was going to do this in the, sitting in the car. That's why the car thumbnail is up there. But I was going to do that there, but there's just so much I want to talk about that I said maybe I'll just do this. I was going to record it, and I said if I'm going to record it, I might as well just do it live. So here we are. All right, so we're going to jump into it because we're not going to belabor the time here. So this is going to be mostly a presentation. I'll open up the questions later if people want to ask questions or whatever after. All right, so we're going to start this off with a couple of thoughts about culture. Some of this you've seen me play before, but we'll play it again. And here we go.
I woke up this morning and I thought about it. As a black man, we are the only people on social media platforms that seem to create extensive content on dragging each other down. Our men spend much of our time talking about how horrible our women are. Women talk about how horrible our men are. Women talk about how horrible our women are. And what is that all about, really? I don't see where other groups, maybe I'm just not in the know, but I don't see where other groups just take their public platforms to just degrade and dehumanize and diminish their own. But we do this. And then we want to know, why is it that we can't seem to develop relationships, healthy relationships within the black community? I think it boils down to a self-hatred. I don't know if we really like ourselves or not, because I cannot look at a person that looks just like me and have all of these negative things to say about them without that being the reflection of the fact that I don't really feel good about myself. Now, I know I may get some flack for this, but you got to at least think about it. What does that say about us, that we have all of this to say? I woke up this morning.
Okay, so that's that. Let's see, a couple more things I want to play here. So I played this before. Dr. George C. Frazier. We'll play a couple of his clips here.
There's a talk I give on the 5 biggest challenges black people have for the next 100 years. The number one challenge is the existential crisis of the black family. The existential crisis of the black family. Marriage in our culture is down to 34%. When we were growing up, it was 85%. It's now down to 34%. 71% of our sisters are not married. 29% will never get married. 63% of our brothers are not married. 30% of them will never get married. There is no culture in the history of humankind that has risen to maximize their full human potential without family at the center of their culture. This only exists. This is an interesting but negative statistic. This phenomenon of the existential crisis of our family only exists among African American black people. It does not exist on the continent or anywhere else in the diaspora. So there must be something in the water. We must fix this. It is a lot easier said than done because it is impacting our wealth. Quick statistics. For 350 years, household median income was dominated by white people. They were number one in this country. They no longer are number one, they're number three, and there's a reason for it. So, who has the highest household median wealth in America? It's East Indians, $104,000 a year. What's the marriage rate in the East Indian culture? 94%. Two are working. Who's number two? Chinese Asians. Household median income, $110,000 a year. Marriage rate close to 70%. Number three are white people. Household median income, $88,000 a year. What's the marriage rate? Almost 50%. Down significantly. Number four are Hispanics. Household median income, $61,000 a year. Marriage rate close to 70%. We are at the bottom. Household median income, $55,000 a year. Marriage rate, 34%. And projected based on facts and statistics that if we do not fix this, because white folks ain't fixing this, our marriage rate will be in the low teens in the next 20 years. This is an enormous challenge. That's a whole talk by itself on how do we fix it. It can be fixed, but we have to, first of all, understand that this is a problem. No one's talking about this problem. This is a huge problem. It's the number one problem in our culture. So we must fix it.
Wow.
There's a talk I give on the 5 biggest challenges.
Okay, a little bit more from Dr. George Fraser.
We're not poor, we're just broke. Our money goes in one direction, away from us, and we're some of America's most conspicuous consumers. We are a $1.1 trillion annual economy. If we were a nation, we would be the 16th richest nation in the entire world. But again, our money goes in one direction, away from us, and we're some of America's most conspicuous consumers. And we will not stop buying from people who will not support us. We are addicted to consumption. We do not produce anything that we buy, and we do not sell anything that we purchase. We just consume. There was an interesting article on the front page of USA Today, and here's what this article said about Negroes in America. The black baby boomers will be the first generation of Africans in America to raise another generation of Africans in America that will not do better than them. So in the 400-year history of our people, Mr. Hill, in this country, we are the only generation to raise another generation that will be worse off. We collectively need our asses kicked. And you can count me out of that. I will not contribute to that egregious statistic. And neither must you. We're not poor.
So that he said is that's all from there. That he said is now a problem that is hitting the dominant culture as well. That they are being now the first to in their history raise a generation that is doing worse than their forefathers, and this is going to become apparent as we go through this. Let's see. I'm not going to play any of this, but if you have not watched this video here about Barbara Sizemore, Dr. Barbara Sizemore, this one right here, the one that's playing right here, Black people still don't get it. I've talked about this. This needs to have 2 million views. I mean, every Black person in America. If I was the head of an organization, I would, you'd have to really kind of study Dr. Barbara Sizemore, Dr. George Fraser, and there's a few others that you really have to understand there. their philosophy. And Dr. Barbara Sizemore in this video says, because Black people haven't saved their culture, oh, I didn't mean to play it. Their culture will not save them. So, so go over, type in Dr. Barbara Sizemore, take an hour of your time, and watch that video. It's really, to me, very, very life changing. All right. Okay. So that's that. And make sure y'all say hello so I can acknowledge you all. So hello to each of them. Yeah, I don't know why we do this. Well, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about this, Lakeisha, why we drag each other. Yes, we must fix our family structure, and yes, our 34% is very low, and all that. Okay, so what was sent to me, and again, I appreciate it. This is not a dig on them at all. But they sent me something as we're talking about obesity rates and why we're looking at some of the problems that we're talking about that were just addressed in those videos that I was just going through, is because of a lack of family structure. And I'm going to stick by that. I think that's what the vast majority of the literature says. So we had a good discussion that I didn't really take the time to delve into last night, concerning not only family structure, but also we're talking about obesity. And looking, to me, it's always looking for another reason, looking for an excuse, and that's what I grow tired of. Right? We gotta, as Dr. Fraser said, nobody's talking about this because it's uncomfortable, because it's painful, because we don't want to look in the mirror. We want to blame racism, we want to blame other people, we want to blame this, we want to blame that, we want to blame obesity and all this kind of stuff. But as we're going to read through these articles that were sent to me, it still comes down to family structure, and it's become apparent as I talked about this. All right, so the first one we got is this one that was sent to me. This name of this is obesity or overweight now affect 1 in 3 youth. How experts are responding. Right, so a couple of chubby little kids there. 1 in 3 youths 10 to 17 experience obesity or overweight, according to new data by the NAEKC Foundation. You got to be first of all, you got to be very, very whenever you're reading stuff, you got to do peer reviewed papers and stuff. But this was sent to me because these foundations and organizations and stuff, they have agendas, right? So you got to be careful when you're citing their stuff. The latest figure, right, and she does have at least, or the foundation does have at least links, so you can go look all this up. I didn't take the time to do all that kind of stuff, right? Obesity alone affects 14 million kids and teens nationwide and has become a leading chronic disease among kids, according to American Academy of Pediatrics. Obesity also increases the risk of other serious and mental health conditions, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, anxiety, asthma, and depression. Right, then it goes through the nation, and right where most of this is going on, and most of this is going on in the poor South, as you can see from here. Most of this is going on in the poor South. Let's take a look at disparities in youth and obesity. Given the influence of structural inequalities, right? Always blaming other people. Structural inequalities and social and economic factors on health, overweight, and obesity do not affect all children equally. Kids Data Book reports that obesity of overweight was substantially higher for Latino, 43%, and Black youth compared to 27% amongst white, Asian, and Pacific Islanders, and all these kind of numbers. Over the past 3 years, rates have jumped 6 percentage points for Asian and Pacific Islander youth, and 5 percentage points for Latino, the largest increase of all racial ethnic groups with data. The AAP states that overweight and obesity are more prevalent among kids living in poverty. This is where the culture comes in at. Low resource communities and and immigrant families, as well as those who have experienced discrimination or stigma. You know how you get out of poverty? Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? How do we get out of poverty? Anyone? Two-parent homes. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to blame other people. It's two-parent homes. This is culture. Looking across the country, the highest rates of youth and obesity were generally found in southern states. We take a look at that and all that, right? So when examining national rates by gender, males 10 to 17 consistently had higher rates of obesity or overweight than their female peers. Why aren't these guys going outside and playing anymore? Riding bikes, building forts, jumping over bridges, jumping over streams, playing kickball, sitting in the house playing video games all day. This is culture. Stop letting your boy sit in the house all day. Stop letting your boy sit in the house. This is culture. Then it goes through all this body mass and changes, different changes and all this kind of stuff, right? So you can read more about that. Not a very long read, but this is culture. It's culture. All right. Next one. Good afternoon to you, Regina Williams. Good afternoon. All right. Still continue on with the obesity issue and culture. This one, American Psychological Association, obesity in the growing brain. Right. This is the discussion that we were having last night by Miss Lou here, who has written eating disorders, obesity in children, cognitive risks. Right. Again, we're talking about, in particular, African and male children falling behind in schools. Therefore, if they fall behind in schools, they risk more suspensions, more expulsions, and risk not going to higher grades, graduating on time, going to and then going to college, being able to perceive things in college. And we want to blame this on just being overweight, but you're overweight because of a culture, overweight because of lack of two-parent homes, overweight because you don't make your kids go outside and play, and therefore that affects their ability to do the required schoolwork. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, children are overweight with their BMI is at 85 percentile. For others in the same age and sex, obesity is defined as a BMI at or above the 95 percentile. Excess weight in children is associated with a range of impairments in executive functions, including weaker working memory, right? Attention, right? When I'm putting kids on these drugs and stuff, mental flexibility and decision making, according to a review by June Liang, PhD, of the Center for Healthy Eating and Activity Research at the University of California, and all that, right? Brain images studies have shown structural changes too. Research by Antonio Convent, MD of New York University, found that obesity and metabolic syndrome, a combination of weight-related issues such as high blood pressure or triglycerides, right? Oh, this is all the fat that's going on in circulating through the blood. It's cutting off items in the brain, right? And therefore you can't think straight. Incidence resilience, low HDL or the good cholesterol, and a big belly are related to lower academic scores, thinner orbital frontal anterior cingulate cortices, less white matter integrity, and reduced hippocampal volume. So it's not only you got a big belly, but it's affecting children's brains. Psychologists among those trying to determine how much of these effects are due to diet versus weight, right? So even though here's what this is about to say, even though you can be skinny because you're eating bad junk food, because the kids are eating bad junk food, it's not going to say this, but it's sticking to the parts of your brain, cutting things off, and therefore you don't get a full volume of blood supply. And a study of 52 children aged 79, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign researchers found that children who ate more saturated fats did worse on the hippocampus-related item and related memory tasks. The ability to discern and remember correlationships among things and ideas, regardless of their BMIs. So even if they're eating garbage, even if they look like they're in shape, even if they're eating garbage, they still had lower memory tasks, etc. However, the team also found that eating a diet high in omega-3 fatty acids promoted relational memory, right? High omega-3s, you know what? Eat a lot of salmon. Salmon, chia seeds, it's another high omega-3. I can't think. Those are the two ones that you should be eating. There's probably a few more. I think pumpkin seeds, maybe. University of Illinois researchers also explored how the type of body fat may affect cognitive changes, finding that overweight children 79 with more belly fat did worse on tests on hippocampal dependent relational memory. This is from 2015. Get your kids outside and let them run around and play. Researchers suggest that obese children have more health problems and are absent from school more often, tend to come from families with lower socioeconomic status, and face social stigmas, right? They don't want to go outside because they're chubby. They don't want to play because they're chubby. They don't want to participate in gym because they're chubby. They want to stay home in bull school or whatever it's called now. Skip school. We used to call it bullying school because they're chubby. All factors that may affect academic performance. Animal studies, though, buttress the evidence that obesity changes young brains, and studies in children so far have looked at similar cognitive functions, Davidson says. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with this? Two-parent household. Social economic stuff. It'll help. It's not going to be a perfect thing. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. And I'm not saying that if we overnight eliminated the complete eradication of obesity, particularly within the Black community, but in all children, if you eliminated that, I'm not saying that that's going to change the cultural challenges that Dr. Frazier was talking about, or that Dr. Sizemore was talking about. We still have to do a lot of work. That's why I'm not convinced that it's all about food and what we're eating. We still have to do something about what we look at, and this is what we look at, what we consume, not only physically but through our brains and through our minds. You are seeing impairments in the kinds of tasks which make it more difficult for obese children to be successful in school. It's not huge, and maybe they can overcome it by working harder. Yes, but the memory cognitive functions in kids that are affected are not just about academics. It's the way the brain processes information and remembers things. You meeting kids who can't do simple math. You meeting kids who forget everything. This is the issue. A lot of it has to do with the food, and you can eat better food. First of all, you could eat better food if you're a single parent, because there is a group, I think it's called PCRM, something PCRM. It's an acronym for a group of doctors who practice whole food plant-based diet, as far as what they're trying to, and these are medical doctors, board certified and all that kind of stuff. But they're trying to abandon traditional medicine, or Western medicine, I should say, and go towards more traditional whole food type based medicines. And so they actually go around to poor communities and have taught people in these communities how to shop, how to buy food, even if it's canned food. Eat the canned spinach if you can't get the fresh spinach. Eat the canned beans versus eat the other stuff, right? So it can be done. So this group of doctors, they go out and teach people how to do this. There's videos on YouTube about how to shop, if even if you live in a quote unquote food desert, but that's been debunked. Food deserts has been debunked as well. I'm just saying that the ability to get this to work on some things is out there. We just have to find it. Along with attention and memory, executive function also relates to controlling impulses, right? The kids can't control their impulses, so you want to stick them on Ritalin and other kind of things, when really what they need to do is change their diets. Decision making and delaying gratification, all because of their diets. The fatty foods, get them off of McDonald's and all this kind of stuff, and you'll see their impulse more than likely improve. Decision making and delaying gratification. Overweight children show less inhibitory control compared with normal weight children, which may make it harder for them to say no to unhealthy foods, according to the study and all that. So you can go over and continue reading that. More stuff in here. I'm not going to belay the time. And all this is from the journal, again, from the American Psychological Association and all that. So, hello, Rhonda. Hello. All right, so that's that. So now what I want to do is I want to play a little bit. Now what I want to do is I want to play a little bit of something that was sent to me when they're talking more about culture. This is a bunch of academics, doing a round table. And this is a good talk. I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously, but I'm going to play a few minutes of it. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about culture. Good afternoon, lunchtime live. Yeah, yeah. I had a few minutes. I got some stuff to do, but I had a few minutes, and I was going to do this again. I was going to do this in the car, but there was so much information I wanted to give that I just didn't think I could do it effectively in a recorded thing. Low T Rhonda, high vibe. Sunshine says we had to fix the Black family. Once upon a time, most Black couples were married and valued their union. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to play a few minutes of this. and this is from the Brett Weinstein Dark Horse podcast. This is a couple of people I listened to. John McWhorter, who's my thing is hovering on now. I don't know if you guys can see it, and then Glenn Lowry. I actually listen to their stuff quite often. But these are, I guess, a bunch of intellectuals, and this guy up here in the center here is the host, Brett Weinstein, and he's got a black panel up here. Only one lady up here. He should have had another lady, but whatever. And then so you can go through the timestamps here, and we're gonna stop on that. It's pretty, 2-hour podcast, so you guys got some time when you're not listening to me. Go over and listen to these people. It's a good show. And so let's see. There's a comment here I want to say. Can we get a 2021 revisit of this roundtable to see how, if at all, anyone's thoughts have changed or progressed? That was from 3 years ago. This was recorded in 2020, I believe. 4 years ago, 2021, 2020 or so, 2020, during the pandemic. So we're talking about this, and this is, it's soon after George Floyd. Right, watching this, it sees tears in my eyes as a black person who's constantly silencing, who's constantly silencing, wishing that I could hear some balanced, real, solution-focused discussion about these issues, and to have it modeled in this way. My God, there's still hope. They need to do this regularly. This is why I love the internet as an alternate to mainstream media. Everyone gets to speak. Okay, so we're going to circle over to here to Glenn Lowry. These questions here. Oh, here we go. Okay, we'll play a few. John M. Native Americans, Glenn counters. Something about his questions. Oh, here we go.
Yes, let me suggest 3 questions.
Good.
Welfare, affirmative action, and crime. I'll be succinct. Reparations is a terrible idea. Mobilizing $1 trillion through the politics of the state on behalf of a program of racially defined redistribution is a terrible idea. Very bad for the country. South Africa-like categorization of its citizens, very bad for Black people. Sapping us of the possibility of dignity. It won't solve the problem. The issue here is differences in the capacity to generate wealth. If you don't address it, any wealth disparity will reemerge even if you reshuffle the deck. It's a terrible idea. Welfare of the 60s and 70s destroyed the Black family.
Let me just pause it right there and get to some of these comments. Hi, Vibe. You're absolutely right. And I looked this up. I keep hearing about Alzheimer's is referred to as type 3 diabetes in other countries. Sound plausible. That's exactly what it is. I had to look it up. It's type 3 diabetes. I think now there's a push to call it type 3 diabetes here in the United States. That's exactly what it is. So there's a tricking going on here, right? They don't want, even in the articles that I read, they don't want to acknowledge that it's the fat that is sticking to the brain. The saturated fat is sticking to parts of the brain, choking off the oxygen and the nutrients that should be going to the brain. And that's what happens during Alzheimer's. So much fat that has been circling around your body your whole life, and as you get older, it's still in your system, and now it's sticking to the brain, choking off the memory and cognition and everything like that. And now it's going on with young people. So what you heard is absolutely correct. And you can look this up, and other people can look it up as well. Lakeisha says, is there a way to make a positive changes to our communities while building the family? That's what we're trying to explore, is how do we make these different types of things. So kids need to go outside and run and play. Parents make time to take them outside so you can supervise them while they play for their safety, or smaller kids. Listen, this whole safety thing, and I'm not, as a Generation Xer, man, I used to go outside. We used to go outside, and we didn't come in the house. We didn't come in the house until until it was dark. I mean, what are we talking about? This is the helicopter parenting that I think is causing this problem. You got to supervise every little thing that they're doing. Kids fall down, they get scrapes, they get hurt, they run, I don't know. My kids used to come in the house and go outside. Why are you in the house? Can we do this? Can we do that? Why are you talking? Can you build a fort? Why are you asking me that? Just go outside and do it. It's crazy. You are correct. I'm a nurse, and we're getting patients younger and younger, and with the signs of early Alzheimer's, calling it type 3 diabetes. High sugar intakes is the cause. Right. Right. All right. So okay. So here we go. We'll continue on with this. So he's attacking. He's attacking. He's going to attack affirmative action and the welfare state. Yeah.
Welfare of the 20s and 30s will destroy Black dignity. Affirmative action. It's a fraud. Black people have not penetrated the venture capital industry, the code writing industry in Silicon Valley or whatever it is, because not enough Black people have exhibited the skills necessary to succeed at those tasks. The old idea of mid-20th century that Black people are being kept out by animus, bias, and discrimination is false. Development of African-American people lags. Affirmative action is a Band-Aid, crime. The reason that you have so many incidents is because there are so many Black people breaking the law. The police are operating in these cities, as Coleman suggested, in the face of a reality, an outsized level of violence committed by Black people against each other. If we can't be honest about that, school to prison pipeline, mass incarceration and systemic discrimination, if we cannot be honest about what's happening in our communities, African-American communities, with the violent criminal behavior that makes life unlivable for most of the people there, we're not going to get anywhere. So could we begin this deep dive by being honest about welfare, honest about affirmative action, and honest about crime?
I want to go deeper than that. I hear what you said, and it's not that I disagree with any of it, but I also think it's not the root. The question is, why is there disproportionate crime? And I would argue that we have a systemic problem that is not fundamentally about race, but the race problem that we genuinely have plays into this economic disparity problem in a way that those who have not reached the bottom rung of the ladder, of course, more likely to engage in crime. It's what anybody would do. Right? If you don't have legitimate opportunities, you will.
I'm sorry, Brett. Excuse me. I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
Is it really not patronizing a community to say of their criminals? It's what anybody would do. When you just got through saying, or someone did, that there are almost no Asians being killed by the police.
Good. All right. So let's take this apart and figure out what we actually are saying, what we actually believe. And I, of course, am open to be convinced that I have it wrong. But my point would be, you have a very different history for people of African descent who arrive in the New World, and you have a different history for Native Americans in the New World. And then those two populations have had unique dysfunction as a result of the fact that their origin stories are different than the other populations that are here. And so the only point that I'm really making, it's not that anybody would do any of these crimes. It's that when you don't have legitimate opportunities, you seek opportunities that are higher risk. Nobody wants to go to prison, and you don't choose to engage in things that will tend to get you sent there if you have good opportunities. But if you don't, you may engage in behaviors that are likely to run you afoul of the police. And so all I'm asking is, I think one of two things would have to be true. Either there's something about the Black population that is more prone to be criminal, or there's something causal that results in that population ending up in that category more frequently. And I believe strongly it's likely to be the latter. I've seen no evidence that this is endogenous.
Brett, I think all of that is true, but I think you're missing one part. And if we're talking about deep dive, this is deep and it's very hard to quantify. And it's partly why many people refuse to think about it, which is that there's a cultural issue, and it's not about Black culture going back centuries. It's not about Black culture even going back 50 years ago. But there was a turn in the mood in the 1960s where, in ways that fascinate me, how this percolated from a small radical group into a general mood in a whole community really fascinates me. Something happened between 1960 and 1980 that taught an awful lot of especially young Black men that Black authenticity involves checking out, that Black authenticity means that you get a pass because the man doesn't like you. And as vague as that sounds, the difference between Black culture in 1970 and Black culture in 1950, even among the poorest, is stark and unmistakable. Something happened. And we still have the legacy of that. And so to the extent that, living in New York City, this is something that nobody ever wants to say out loud. You'll read in the Times or you'll hear on NPR, 7 youths killed last night at a barbecue. And you don't even need to wonder. It's always Black people in certain neighborhoods. Now, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with the people. But the question is, why aren't any poor white people doing that? Why isn't that happening in poor Chinatowns? Why isn't that happening in many towns in India? Poverty alone doesn't explain that. It's partly what came to be seen as normal in the wake of the Black power mood, and also the expansion of welfare with Black people in mind starting in 1966, which was pernicious for family relations, although nobody knew that's what was going to happen at the time. So I think you're right. Poverty is one thing, but to the extent that anybody here is bristling a little bit, it's because there's more. There's a Black thing, and it's a very hard thing to talk about, but it's there. I don't know if all of you agree with me on this. That's my take on it.
I'd like to offer an analysis of this period. I think that, and by the way, I'm going to say all this with a great deal of humility because there are several people on this call who are going to know more about specific aspects of what I'm going to lay out here than I do. This is my sense, and it is up for correction. I think that John McW, as opposed to John W. here, is right to pin our attention to the couple of decades that followed after the end of the civil rights movement, the 70s and the 80s. My sense is that for most Americans on either side of this, well, for many Americans, there is a sense that, or at least there was a sense that the Black experience in America was something wrought with state-sponsored oppression and institutional racism, right up until the moment in which Dr. King was killed and after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, so on and so forth. After that, however, after the success of the nonviolent movement, the major sort of barriers to meaningful equality in American life and Black opportunity had been eliminated. And at that point, it simply became a question of our own cultural commitments and personal responsibilities in terms of our ability to, live up to the opportunities before us. And that sadly, the Black community has failed to do that since then. On the other hand, you have this other narrative that says that racism went underground. It wound up being baked into the operations of our institutions and our systems, but it remained just as pernicious, and the white American majority remained just as committed to it. And so now we have to pull the structures of society down to get at the rotted sort of marrow of that. And that's the narrative that you see proliferating on the left. I think that there is truth enough in these perspectives to arrive at some clarity at what really happened, but it's very complicated in my view. This is how I look at it. In the 1960s, you had a number of things happen that set the cultural and the structural sort of preconditions for the sort of development of the
So he's going to lay out the part about the 60s. I rewinded just a little bit, but I want to kind of chime in here about this comment by High Vibe. When I lived in a small town in New Jersey, the over-policing and even smaller Black and brown sections was so obvious. If you're a Black driving in the neighborhood, white towns, the police followed you. So when Glenn Lowry says that, I agree that we haven't lived up to this certain standards. And Glenn Lowry is the older gentleman up in the upper left. I agree that, we haven't lived up to the standards. But we can't pretend as if there wasn't a racial animus that was causing them to over police. It wasn't always about crime. Yes, crime was out of control, but a lot of it had to do with just, we're going to make sure that these people stay in their place and harass and follow them. So there was a definite thing to that. Growing up, we had family meetings once per month, and I hated it because I couldn't see the value of that time. Today, I thank my father for initiating that. Yeah. All right, here we go. Let me rewind it a little bit here.
How I look at it. In the 1960s, you had a number of things happen that set the cultural and the structural sort of preconditions for the sort of development of the Black culture that wound up becoming self-destructive in many ways that it was not self-destructive before, but that has to be seen in its interrelationship with structural aspects of American society. So to go down some examples, hopefully quickly, economically speaking, I live in Los Angeles, Southern California. Blacks used to dominate the agricultural sector and the service sectors in California, and I suspect other parts of the country. With the Great Society program and the opening up of immigration policy, what they called chain migration, right? You had many immigrants coming from Latin America in particular, who came in and dominated the agricultural and the service sectors, thus pushing African Americans out.
This is going to be important. This is important. We're talking about culture here, and I'm gonna tie what he's saying right here about immigrants coming in and how this is affecting or we allowing it to affect our culture.
The same period of time, you had manufacturing opportunities begin to go overseas to places like China and elsewhere in the late 60s, going into the 70s. You had many working class opportunities for African Americans begin to contract. That's point number one. Point number two, the advent of the Great Society program, the welfare programs. The great victory of welfare in the Great Society was that it eliminated hunger for a good many people, right? The Heritage Foundation would concede that point of success in that way. What it did not do was provide an avenue for social mobility. It provided some discretionary income to African Americans as economic opportunities were contracting, point number two. Point number three, and it also became a disincentive for family formation. And that's a very important thing. Disincentivizing two-parent households because you get more benefits when you're a single parent.
Hope y'all caught that. Some of these welfare programs, while intended to be good, I'm going to rewind it a little bit in case you missed it, were intended to be good. It did help feed some people, but unfortunately, it disincentivized um, marriage, family, and family formation. So when I get pushback about saying, sometimes the ladies have married the government, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So, and Glenn Lowry, who's now looking kind of pissed, has alluded to the same thing. And if you're not sure, let me see here. You can go through their bios are down here. Their bios to who these people is. He's a professor of economics, Glenn Lowry, and you can read through their bios and all this kind of stuff to figure out who these people are. So they're not just a bunch of talking heads. If you're not familiar with who they are, so they're some prominent people in academics. Let's see.
Point number 3, and it also became a disincentive for family formation. And that's added some discretionary income to African Americans as economic opportunities were contracting. Point number 2. Point number 3, and it also became a disincentive for family formation. And that's a very important thing. Disincentivizing 2-parent households because you get more benefits when you're a single parent. Point number 3, eventually, as we move past the assassinations of major Black leaders, you have as we go into the 70s and certainly into the 80s, the advent of heroin, the advent of crack cocaine, and a drug-based economy that winds up being serviced by gangs that initially arise to replace the sort of Black militant leadership of the community who saw themselves as defending the community against rogue police officers, but wind up becoming the distributors of highly profitable narcotics in a way that, in the absence of economic opportunity and social mobility, but in the presence of discretionary income and systematic policies that are already undermining family formation in the Black community, become an economic center in the Black community that is self-poisoning and pushing of this substance in a way that further decimates the Black family, further decimates Black men, but that also restructures much of the cultural foundations of the community. And that emerges in interaction with the police response to that epidemic. And so you have the expansion of the police state, you have the beginnings of mass incarceration that accelerate in the 70s and the 80s, you have a failing educational system in that moment, you have the flight of Black middle class and Black professionals into integrated communities, but leaving many folks in the inner city. All of this is the immediate ancestor to the anger and the vitriol we see erupting out of Black America right now, but that nobody is able to positively identify for what it is. It really is a cluster of systemic forces interacting with our culture in a way that has pinned us into self-destructive behavior. And the most anybody can say about this is that, well, this is systemic white supremacy in action, or on the other hand, this is just Black people not living up to what they should be doing for themselves. There's some grain of truth in each of those things, but they are both wildly simplistic to getting at the truth of what actually happened to us in the late 60s, in the 1970s, and the 1980s. And even though most of those problems have improved since then, as a matter of policy, within the Black community, the memory of these things, our people my age's parents and so forth, our aunts, uncles, the memory of all of that has been passed down in a way that makes it seem, particularly for people still living in Watson, Detroit, and Harlem, et cetera, that these problems have never improved because for many of us, we are living with the inherited legacy of the interaction of these forces. So if we can analyze this in a way that can allow for a conversation of clarity to take place around these issues and disenthrall ourselves from simplistic cultural explanations on the one hand, or wildly alarmist and radical imputations of racism to just the nation broadly speaking on the other, I think we could actually get somewhere.
May I make a suggestion?
Comprehensive frame for this. Yes.
I would like to make a suggestion about how to do that. I've watched this debate unfold between people who are focused on personal responsibility and people who are focused on systemic causes, and I find a great deal of truth in both of them. But I think we haven't gone back far enough in history in order to understand what's really going on. And when I mentioned the special origin story for people of African descent in the New World and for Native Americans, the point has everything to do with what John McWhorter was saying with respect to culture, which is in both these cases, you had a systematic disruption of inherited culture and a replacement of that inherited culture with something that was full of malware. In other words, designed to serve the population that did the installing. And so in some sense, we are dealing with the outgrowth of that do not manifest simply as white supremacy as it is now defined in the minds of white people, but it does leave people with the impression that the structure itself is unfair. And so I really...
So, while this simplistic is very true, conversation clarity will be a start. So I actually agree with what's his name? Weinstein Brett Weinstein, that they're not going back far enough. I don't think that you can go back to the civil rights movement, and what he said was true. The assassination of leaders, the infusion of money through welfare systems, mass incarceration, police stops, the even the passing down of cultural problems. Right, when you listen to your grandmother talk about how unfair the system is, and now you grew up thinking that the system is unfair. I think all that is true. But I also agree with Brett is in saying that you're not going back far enough, right? And I like his analogy there of the malware that was installed in African American people, that from our time in slavery and of course post-slavery Jim Crow era, right? We were told to be second-class citizens, made to be second-class citizens, denied entry into the military, denied entry into colleges and universities, denied certain types of jobs. And then we're growing up again with this type of malware installed in our minds, propagating that collectively to our children, to our grandchildren. And then, of course, the foot is never proverbially taken off of our neck, really until the 1990s. People say the 1980s, really until the 1990s. That's really when it got off of their neck. And even then, we got the '94 crime bill, so which was targeted at us. Um, so So that's that. I'm not going to play too much more of that. But you guys can go over and finish watching the entirety of that. So that's I thought it was good to get a little bit of that. So you can go over there and it's all you can scroll down here and see where you want to listen to, or just listen to the whole thing in its entirety. It's a great conversation. All right, so I want to finish this off with this idea that was talked about. Now, we started off with talking about the economics that we have and the ways to fix the problem with Dr. George Fraser. Then we went to our children need to go outside, play, have better family structures, incorporate the families, bring back the families, build the families up. Then we heard from a couple of intellectuals. Obviously, we didn't hear all of them, but you can go back there and listen to the rest of that, and listen to the other intellectuals about how we fix this problem. What is the genesis of this problem? Why we don't? And as the first person, I think is a bishop, said, we're the only group of people who are dogging each other out on the internet. Right? All of this is connected. All of this is connected, and I think that Brett Weinstein really summed it up well. Is that this is a malware installation problem, and we need almost a systemic reboot about how do we do that? How do we really do that? Okay, so now, and if you remember when the brother in the upper right hand corner, I can't remember his name, the one with the headphones on, he was talking about what was going on in Watts and different places, and the migrants coming over, taking the jobs. Because remember, African Americans did those jobs. African Americans did those jobs in the 1940s and 1950s. We said we don't want to do those jobs anymore. We want to enter in the mainstream America. And so therefore they entered mainstream America. Slowly the foot is being taken off their necks. The next thing you know, right, you got to have somebody doing these jobs. You got to have somebody picking the lettuce, somebody pick them, but somebody's got to pick the potatoes, tomatoes, and other fruits and vegetables. So you open up the borders and let in the 1960s they changed the laws about who can come to America, the migrations and all that. So you have a bunch of Latino people from South and Central America come to the U.S. taking advantage of the American dream. Okay, that's still going on today, but some are still coming to do those types of jobs. And now, as I'm going to talk about, Vivek Ramaswamy, in the comments that he made about not taking care and advantage of the American dream. So I know a number of people who have lived in the South, in Texas, in border states, Texas, Arizona. I don't know anybody who's ever lived in New Mexico, but Texas and Arizona, I know people who live there, and I've been to to those states. No, and so a lot of times the people who live there and who work there and are dealing with people who or immigrants or recent immigrants who are very collectively minded. They are looking out for their own. So they enter into a business, start a business, or enter into a business, and they're looking to hire their own. That's the way that it is. So now we get Vivek Ramaswamy, who is a multimillionaire, billionaire, running for the president of the United States, and then he wrote a book, um, He wrote a book called A Nation of Victims. Let me see if I can put it up here. Let's see. I have not read this book here. Let's see, share screen. But I watched somebody else talk about this book. So let me be very clear what I'm saying. I believe in reading things for myself, obviously. I have not read this book, but he's saying, so he's talking about the nation of victims, identity politics, the death of merit, and the path back to excellence. Who do you think he's talking about in the vast majority of this book? And again, I haven't read it, so I probably am maybe speaking out of turn. I that totally could be, but from people who have read it, they've told me that this is what's been going on. So if you go to read a sample of it, right? So here's a sample of the book, right? So you can scroll down here and read a sample of this book. And here's the table of contents: a nation of underdogs, the Civil War. Why is this guy who's first generation immigrant, right? His parents were from India. He's born here. Why is he talking about the Civil War, the Constitutional War, race theory? What is he talking about there? Conservative victimhood, empire in decline, how victimhood leads to national decline. And this is what other people are talking about, even on the panel that we just watched about victimhood, right? So the need to forgive. So I don't know if I want to read this book because I don't really want to give him the money, in all honesty. But maybe I'll go to the library and pick it up. But I just who is he talking about here, right? So I feel comfortable making that statement about who is he's talking to because of a recent commentary that he has made. If you have not seen this, if you have not seen this, let's see. Here's X. Here's X. Right. This is him on X, and this is what a lot of people in the Trump movement, the Trump MAGA movement, are upset about, right? Because at one time it was okay to just kind of talk about us, quote unquote. Now you're talking about other people, right? The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of innate American IQ deficit, a lazy or wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. What are we talking about today? Culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. Uh, if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. Our American culture, our has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 1990s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over math Olympia champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates the corny Boy Meets World, venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Stephen Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. Fact, I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 1990s were actively limited to how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity and their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons. Are there still Saturday morning cartoons? That stopped in the 90s. More books, less TV, more creating, less chilling. Less chilling. Who's that aimed at? More extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy is what you will achieve. Now close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s or even now and who raised their kids according to one model versus another. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in the hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we have our asses handed to us by China. This can be our Sputnik moment. We awaken from slumber before we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have to cut out for us rather than wallowing in victimhood or just wishing or legislating alternative hiring practices into existence. I'm confident we can do it. Right? Talking about hiring practices, and so there was always this idea, There's always this idea that certain people get these types of jobs. Certain people are unqualified in these hiring practices and DEI hires and all this kind of. There's a lot of this is just really just language aimed and targeted at us. If you don't recognize that, you're missing a boat. You're missing a boat. For a long time, and I talked about the immigrants who are the Latino immigrants who are living in the border states and probably other places as well. That they hire their own. Not always, and this is not 100%, obviously, but a lot of times we have looked to and kept up with and thought about and appealed to the history of this country and the guilt and white guilt to get jobs, to get advantages, and to move up and to do all this type of stuff, and to change laws and to get to hiring practices. And I still kind of sometimes I'm looking to get another teaching job, and what's your race, and you know uh, all these other coded questions here, all these different things. D- don't get it twisted. They won't hire you. We have appealed to the guilt of white people for what they have done concerning all the stuff that the show that I showed you, Brett Weinstein's show, has told us. We've appealed to that. And these people who come in here from other countries, they don't have no guilt. They ain't gonna hire you. Vivek ain't gonna hire you. Vivek gonna hire somebody who's a first generation Indian from where he come from. That's who Vivek's gonna hire. That's what Elon Musk is gonna hire. So this is from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Let me see here. Present here. And this is how people interpreted what he was saying. Cincinnati Enquirer, Cincinnati.com, the Enquirer. Ohio's Vivek Ramaswamy ignites firestorm over American mediocrity, Saved by the Bell. Greater Cincinnati native and Donald Trump ally Vivek Ramaswamy ignited a firestorm Thursday with a social media post denouncing American culture mediocrity, several TV characters from the 90s sitcoms, and too much chilling. Ramaswamy, along with billionaire Elon Musk, was tapped by the incoming president to head the Department of Government Efficiency. It took the Musk-owned social media network X to ostensibly opine why tech companies hire foreign-born engineers, but the post quickly veered into a post on what Ramaswamy saw as problems with American culture, a culture that celebrates a prom queen. We read all that. More math tutoring, less hanging out the mall. Here he is walking. The tweet ignited several news sites called a civil war within the MAGA circles. Now, right, it's okay when you say that certain people are lazy, certain people aren't trying hard enough. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you're saying that they're not doing it, oh, now it's a problem. Now it's an issue. Major MAGA influencers like Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec, Carter, and Laura Loomer, all of whom have more than 1 million followers, skewered Ramaswamy and X's owners, Elon Musk, who came to his defense. Not too much longer to this. So that's it. So you can go over and read that. There's not too much more of that. But I just want to talk about culture, and to let you know that when we take a look at what's going on concerning our attacking each other on social media posts, as the bishop, I think he's a bishop, said, our inherited problems of looking to work with each other, spending with each other, to the intellectuals that were on there talking about these problems that they're trying to say started in the 60s, but I agree with Brett, started long past the 1960s. I think that they started really since the end of the Civil War. It was really just been going on with that. And then when you look at these other groups who get here from, whether it's India, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Latin America, they all come here. and they take advantage of the American dream, it's all, they're bringing their culture with them. These people from the Caribbean, many of them, from the Caribbean, from India, from China, from Latin America, they bring their culture with them, and they're protective of their culture. And as Barbara Sizemore said in the video, I didn't play it, but you can go watch the video. You didn't save your culture, so your culture cannot save you. So that's my presentation for today, and I just want to talk about that and how we go about changing the culture. And part of it is going to come down to strong families, monthly meetings, changes. I think that we got to set up. I've talked about this before. Setting up, different. Every Black organization needs to have this code of ethics, right? When the Black Panthers were formulated, they had, I think it was 8 or 10 points. I want to say 10. Let's just say 10 points. I can't remember off the top of my head. 8 or 10 points that they were going for. And I think that every Black organization, whether it's a police organization, a corrections organization, firefighters, a Black teachers organization, a Black lawyers association, a Black barbershop, Black hairdressers association, Black churches, all need to adhere to these 10 points. So we're going to spend money with each other. We're going to collectively, let's list out 10 points about how we save our culture. You can't move up in this organization unless you're married. All these different things that we should really have a sit down conversation about how we do that. That would be one method to do it. The other method is we got to value education. Ramaswamy wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong about less TV and more education. All right, they've done the studies about how many hours a week Chinese American kids do homework versus Black American kids, and it shows, and it shows. So self-hatred was mentioned. Our cultures are generally more family oriented. Yeah, and that's an issue. That's an issue within Black American culture, and this lack of family orientation, this putting each other down, doesn't start in social media. I mean, the bishop was right to a certain extent. It's being broadcast in social media, but the real problem is these are kitchen conversations. These are conversations that you're having over dinner. Your mama wasn't nothing. Your daddy wasn't nothing. I can't stand you. Every time I look at you, I see your daddy. Those are the types of conversations that are being had. Those types of conversations that are being had amongst the kitchen table are now being broadcast around the internet, and everybody sees it now. That's the issue. The issue is the conversation in and of itself, right? And that didn't start. I'm convinced that didn't start. Those types of conversations didn't just start with, the assassination of Black leaders in the 1960s. No, this is a long time coming. This is a long time coming, and I think that the analogy was correct about the dysfunctional software that was put into our minds, and we got to get it out. That's going to come through therapy, through church, through setting up standards. It's got to come through a different way. It's got to come through a different way. So you are correct. I'm first generation American born to Jamaican parents. Failure is not an option. We work 2 to 3 jobs to reach a goal, then cut back when we are financially okay. What does family oriented mean? Black Americans abandon their family. I think that they are protective of their family, that they don't mind taking care of their elderly folks, that they will watch other kids. You may have your own insular family, but extended family counts as well. The family first. Family and protection comes first. Not throwing your daddy under the bus, not throwing the mommy under the bus. Protection in collective ideas. Making sure kids go to school. I'm going to help you do homework. I'm going to watch your kids. Things along those lines. These are all things that seem to be missing, and we have to try to get back to that. Now, we were taught not to wash our dirty linen in public, but today everyone is looking for likes at the expense of all of us. At the expense of all of us. So this is the expense of all of us. Yeah. So, yeah. That's a good point there about not washing your dirty linen in public. Y'all hit the like button. Where we at with likes? Where we at with likes? In my 20s, I worked 2 jobs to buy my second car cash, not to get trapped in a cycle of large monthly payments. That's 16 likes. 30 people are watching. 16 likes. Come on, y'all. Hit the like button. Hit the like button. All right, that's what 17 likes. Okay. That's my presentation for today. That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about culture, bring it to our attention, try to let you know that there are some people who are concerned about it and not just looking for likes, even though I am right now. But this is an issue that we have to have, and we have to really understand, how we get out of this mess. How we get out of this mess. So, thank you for watching, Miss Nara. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. So. Social media is a double-edged sword. First time tuning in, good stuff. I appreciate it. Hit the like button. hit the like button. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Interesting conversation. I appreciate that. Now we have to work on solutions. Solutions is the issue. Solutions is the issue. It's good one thing for for the Brett Weinsteins to have these conversations, which generally only intellectuals will listen to, but this is why it's got to filter down to some of the things that I mentioned. These organizations got to be the next one. You can't be a member of a sorority or a fraternity unless you're going to adhere to certain things, and you certainly can't move up unless you are family oriented. Having a family, marriage. I'm not advocating for people to live miserably. But we got to figure this thing out. And all it comes down to, all the presentations that I gave came down to strong families, from George Fraser, Dr. George Fraser, to Barbara Sizemore, to what they talked about in the Burt Weinstein, even the obesity studies, all talking about socioeconomic issues. And we can fix this, but we got to come together and really try to make some definite changes to these things. And it can be done. It's going to take a long, slow process. We didn't get into this problem overnight, and we're not going to get out of this problem overnight. We didn't get into this problem overnight, and we're not going to get out of this problem overnight. But we can get out of it. It can be done. I'm 100% convinced that it can be done. So, well, you let me know. Hit me up and let me know if it was an interesting conversation. I definitely appreciate you viewing the replay. Definitely. And make sure you hit the like button when you do. Let's see. All right, so that's all I got. If anybody else has any questions or anything, that's all I got. So I will let you all finish your lunch or do what you got to do, and I do appreciate it. So again, I was going to do a car video about this, but it was just too much information I want to bring in here, as you can see. So good conversation, to be honest. I believe the Black community looked out for each other more and support each other when we were segregated. Just listen, there's no doubt about that. There was no doubt about that. Segregation, segregation or integration, I should say, public assistance, it really did a number on the family. When we had to live in certain communities, and I'm not saying that we should go back to any of that, but we definitely looked out for each other. And when the doctors and the lawyers and the teachers and the police officers all lived within a certain community, we all looked out for each other. But when we took the chance to get into a better community, and listen, the communities weren't the best. We certainly needed more land and all that kind of stuff, right? When you look at the land, I want to call them land grants, but when you look at the oh gosh, the word has escaped me. The redlining that was done and all that kind of stuff, and the prospects of other people getting access to different lands or being able to buy homes, the GI Bill, things along those lines, right? That was a game changer for white America. It was a game changer. When you drive around some nice neighborhood, they got 2-3 acres of land and all this kind of stuff. It was a game changer. Meanwhile, we're all huddled into these places, and kids don't have any place to stay. And not only were the positive influences there between the police officers, teachers, firefighters or, you know, black bourgeoisie, if you will. But you're also there with the drug dealers, you know, so you want to get them away from that, right? You want to be able to go to work as your teaching job and come home and not have your house be burglarized. You can't fault anybody for that. So that, you know, we had to get away from that. So I appreciate you, Yoli. Segregation may not be what we want to go back to, but we were doing better community. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just joined, didn't know you were going live today. I didn't know either. I didn't know either. So again, somebody sent me some stuff and I was thinking about it and I was going to do a video about it. But again, I was going to, it was just too much information to do. And hit the bell so you get that notification. So all right. So that's it. There's no other questions. I really, really appreciate you guys checking this out. Watch the replay again. Go over, read the articles that were up there. And you guys can always send me stuff too. Let me put my email. It's always in the stuff. I do enjoy reading stuff. So I'm always looking to learn some new stuff. So you guys can email me videos or articles that you think would be great discussions and all that. And I will try to get to them and read them. So somebody sent me a video or a suggestion for a playlist. And I'm working on that now. That I think the first one's going to drop Monday. So I try to get to this stuff. So all right, that's it. I'm going to go eat my lunch. You guys take care. Much love and peace. Take care.